Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the second video in my editing workflow series, and it's about the making of my 2018 YouTube Rewind video. Now if you haven't seen that one, I'll put a link up here, so please go check it out. Now my 2018 Rewind, it wasn't technically complicated. The real difficulty was just sifting through a year's worth of footage and gathering that all together and assembling something that was entertaining to watch. So this video will be about my basic editing workflow in making that video. So yeah, let's get right to it. My Rewind project is different than a typical YouTube video for me because it contained no new footage. The entire video is made up of clips that I shot throughout 2018. So rather than pulling clips off of devices and SD cards, I had to pull all my footage from my archive drives. First thing I had to do with this project was gather all the footage and get it all in one place. Every video project I do starts with a project folder. So let's go ahead and create that. And let's call it Workflow Demo Making Rewind. And then in that project folder, I'm going to create a number of subfolders for the different categories of media. So let's create B-roll. That's going to be kind of our catch-all for any footage that doesn't really fit in other categories. Made movies. Those are my previously published YouTube videos. Music. That's pretty obvious. That's the music for the video. Spark. That's going to be my DJI Spark footage. And then one final one here for voiceover for the few voiceover clips that I needed for the project. So breaking it into subfolders makes it really easy to identify and manage all your clips. And it's also really helpful when we import it into Final Cut Pro. In Final Cut Pro, we need to import footage into an event. So let's go ahead and create a new event. So File, New Event, and we'll call it same kind of thing. Workflow Demo Making Rewind. And we're going to tell it to create a new project as well. And we want it to be 1080p at 23.98 frames per second. So hit OK. So there's our new event. We have this untitled project, so I'm going to just name it to be the same. So Workflow Demo Making Rewind. Okay, so now we can import our footage. So I've gone ahead and I've gathered up all the clips and I've put them in our folder hierarchy. So we can just hit, we can either go up to File, Import, Media, or we can just use the shortcut key of Command-I. There are two choices for importing the media, copy to library or leave files in place. Now, I always choose copy to library because I like having all my media in one place. It's so much easier to manage. And then when my library gets too large, I can just archive it and start a new one. Now, the next section here is keywords, and it is why I created the folder hierarchy in the first place. Now, notice that I have both options checked on, add keywords from Finder tags and add keywords from folders. Now, Finder tags I don't use too often, but they are basically just keywords at the operating system level. So I'm just going to switch over to my media folder here quickly, and I'll just make a file here and right click on it, and I will add a tag, and I have this goofy tag called Finder tag, so I'm just going to add that just so you can see what it does. So go back to my import here. Now, we want to make sure we're in the proper event, so we are. The workflow demo event is what we want. And then we're just going to drill into our media folder. We're going to select all these subfolders and we're going to hit import all. Everything is imported now, and if we just expand our event, we can see that we have all these different keyword categories with all the different media contained within. And if I hit Command K to bring up the keyword editor and I go find that file where we added the Finder tag, you can see that it has the Finder tag and it has the folder name added, where the other ones in that category just have the folder name. So on import, using the folders and using the Finder tags can be a very powerful way to organize your media. Okay, so let's get started with the video. So I'm just going to begin with a simple title, and to do that I'm going to click on my titles and generators. I'm going to grab a black solid, I'm going to drag that in. Then I'm going to go to my titles, choose a custom title, drag that down as well. And then I'm just going to change the text on that title to be January 1st, 2018, which was the date of my first video of 2018. I'm going to change the font and change the size of the font, and then I'm just going to make sure that is centered. Okay, so now I'm going to add some clips, and I know the clips I want are from a previously published YouTube video, and that's under the keyword of made movies, and it's this first one here. So to skim through the video and select the clips I want, I'm going to use the J, K, and L shortcut keys. The L key skims forward, the J key skims backwards, and the K key is used to pause. So if I repeatedly hit those keys, they go faster and faster. K to pause, and then same thing in reverse. I can just keep hitting the J key and it goes really quickly. So I'm just going to move over here to the front of the clip, and the first bit I want is right at the beginning. So I'm just going to press I to mark the in point.
Hey guys, nice to see you today.
And I skim forward and I hit O to mark the out point. Now I press the F key to mark that as a favorite. And now I need to find my next clip. Okay, so mark my in point by pressing I.
And 2018 is going to be the best year yet.
And hit pause. O to mark my out point. F to mark it as a favorite. So I'm favoriting these clips because that gets saved to my favorite list, and then it makes it really easy when I switch over. I can see my two clips right there under favorites. So it's a really easy way to organize them. So I'm just going to grab those two favorites, put them onto the timeline, and then I'm going to take my title here and I'm going to just shrink down the duration of it. So I've selected both my title and my slug. I hit Control D and I type 200 to change the length of those to be 2 seconds. Now I'm just going to copy them, move my skimmer in between the two clips, and paste my title. And then finally, I'm just going to change the second title to be YouTube Rewind.
Nice to see you today. And 2018 is going to be the best year yet.
Okay, so that's pretty good. We just have to trim a little bit off the end here, but that is starting to look good for my opening sequence, so let's move on to music. The first video in my editing workflow series was all about music, so I won't repeat too much of that information here. If you want to know more about it, go check out that video. I will put a link in the description. So most of my music comes from the YouTube audio library. It's free, it's quite good, and they seem to be adding new music all the time. So let's drop in our first song here. And then what I want to do is I want to go through and I want to mark all the beats because I like cutting my clips to the beats. So what I do is I just play the track and then I hit the M key every time I want to add a marker to mark a beat. Okay, so now what I want to do is I just want to trim my clips up to the beat markers. So this one here, just need to drag it out a little bit. This one can come back a little bit. This one, drag it out. And this one is gonna not quite fit, but that's okay. Okay, that's starting to look pretty good. The rest of the video is pretty much the same process. Find the clips, make the selections, and then add them to the timeline. So I'm going to select a few more clips, and the ones I want are all under my B-roll category. So let's just go grab some stuff here. First I'm going to grab this clip of Molly running to Jen. So mark the in point. Skim forward, mark the out point, favorite that one. Then it's this kind of funny bit here where Molly just has to come over and see what I'm doing. So in point, out point favorite. There's another good Molly clip here. So favorite that one. And there's this nice kind of slow motion one with Molly. So just mark that. Okay, so if we go to our favorites, we now have all these clips under our B-roll category, and I'm just going to select them all, and I'm going to hit the E key, and that just appends them to the timeline. Now, they don't line up with our beat markers, so let's just zoom in a little bit here, and we're just going to kind of line these up where we want them. Line it up to the end. Stretch this one out a bit. And drag that one out a bit too. Now, normally I would just keep adding footage until the video is finished before I start making any adjustments like audio levels, color grading, post-processing, that sort of thing. But for this demonstration, I'm going to skip through all that boring part, and I'm just going to start making these adjustments right away. Okay, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here, and the first thing I want to look at is we have a whole bunch of clips with dialogue. And what I need to do is I need to drop the music level down so you can actually hear the dialogue. Now, that's really easy to do. So I can just go up here and I can select my range tool or use the shortcut key of R. Then I just come down to my music track here and I just drag out a selection, and then I move my pointer over the volume level, and you see how the pointer changes? Well, I can just click on that and I can just drag the music level down. So -14 should probably be pretty good. So if I just zoom in a little bit there, you can see that it's added keyframes for me. And that's the beauty of the range tool. It does all the hard work for you. So I've got a few more clips to do. So let's just select our range tool again by pressing R, and let's just drag, oops, undo that craziness. Let's just drag over this range here. Whoops, a bit too big. Pull down our music to -14. And then one more with this piece of dialogue here. Sticking with audio, we have 4 clips with dialogue, but if we just zoom out a little bit here, you can see that the volume level kind of differs quite a bit from clip to clip. So we want to make that more consistent. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all my clips with dialogue, and then I'm going to come over here to my effects panel and I'm going to add this effect called voice or music. And what that does is it just adds a simple enhancement that just makes your voice quality sound a bit more crisp. So now I want to go through the individual clips, and I just want to kind of adjust the volume levels to make them a bit more even. So maybe this one could come up a touch. And so that looks pretty good. Now, when you're adjusting volume levels, you really want to pay close attention to your meters just to make sure that you're not clipping into the red zone. If you're doing that, it's a bit too loud, so you got to take that down. So maybe there's pretty good. And then for any of the clips where you don't want any of the audio, just make sure you go in, grab that volume slider, and pull it down to 0. Now for this particular clip of Molly, this slow motion close-up, I really like it, but I just find that the movement is in the wrong direction. So that's really easy to fix. I just go up to my retiming editor here and I select reverse clip. So let's see how that looks. Much better. I don't use a lot of voiceover in my videos, but this one had 3 different bits, and adding voiceover is really quite simple. So first let me just zoom out a little bit here, and I gotta find the clip which needs the voiceover. And so switch to all clips, and it's actually in this video here. So I want this bit with the text. So, okay, so let's just set our endpoint.
Someone out there creating better stuff with less gear. I saw that over and over.
Okay, so out point, favorite that one. And let's go to our favorites here. And we'll just drag that into the timeline. So now over here under my voiceover clips,
there is someone out there creating better stuff with less gear.
Okay, so that's the bit that I want. So I'm just going to tag that one as well. And I'm going to drag that into the timeline. So in order to line up the 2 clips, I'm going to need to turn off this music track temporarily so I can hear the dialogue. And I can just do that by selecting the track and hitting the V key. So let's have a listen.
There is someone out there.
So it's not quite in alignment. So I can use there's 2 shortcut keys for that. The comma key will nudge the track to the left, and the period key will nudge the track to the right. So let's just kind of eyeball this first.
There is someone out there creating better stuff with less gear. There is someone out there creating better stuff with less gear.
That is close enough. So I'm just going to trim the ends here a little bit. Now, 2 more things. I don't want the audio on this clip, so I'm just going to drag that down, turn it off. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a marker here and a marker here, and I'm going to label them alignment for voice over. And I'll copy that, and I'll put the same thing on this marker. So just in case, you know, they get shuffled about, I know the alignment points to keep them in sync. Okay, and just a few final adjustments. I'm going to select my music track, hit the V key to turn it back on, and then I'm going to hit the R key and use my range tool to select the bit of the music track that overlaps with the dialogue. So I can bring down the volume level to -14 decibels. And then I'm going to go to my voiceover track. I'm going to add the same voice enhancement as the other pieces of dialogue. And then I'm just going to bring this up just a couple decibels, maybe 4 decibels, just so the volume level is more consistent with the other dialogue. The final phase of my video editing workflow is to do the post-processing work and add polish. Now, I am going to be doing specific videos on color grading, fixing exposure, white balance, so this is just going to be a basic overview. So let's load up the finished product here so we can kind of dive into the details. So we're going to zoom in and just start at the beginning. Now, one of the first things I did here with the title, if I just open up the video animation, just zoom in a bit more here and I'll just show you what's going on. So I just applied this fade in and fade out curve to the animation. So when the title comes in, it kind of fades in and then it also fades out. And it just makes it look a bit smoother and more professional. Now on the next clip, you see, if I just zoom in a bit more here, you see I've added some keyframes and I just pulled down the audio level just by -2 decibels. It was kind of peaking here. It didn't sound very good, so I just made a small adjustment. Okay, so let's move forward a bit here. Now, this particular clip, I'll just zoom in a bit. It's a raw piece of GoPro footage, and basically I shoot all my GoPro footage with a very flat profile. So it always needs a bit of a boost to contrast and saturation and a touch of sharpening. So if I look at my video inspector here, you can see I've done the sharpening, I look at my color board and you can see I've boosted my saturation 22%. And then I've got a color curve here as well where I've just applied a really gentle curve. So just brought down the shadows a touch, pushed up the highlights just a touch. And then I've just taken a tiny bit of blue out of the highlights in the sky. Now these next two clips, these are both iPhone clips. And I find with the iPhone that the images come out of the camera very, very saturated, very contrasty. They look pretty good, so they don't typically need much help. And if I go up to the video inspector, you can see that I've added nothing else but just a bit of sharpening to both of these clips. Now I'm going to shrink it down here, zoom out a bit, and I'm going to move forward to these two clips here. So these two clips back to back are clips from my DJI Spark. I'm just going to turn off the color curve here. You can see that things get really blue. And same goes for this clip. So I don't know what I was doing. Clearly I had my color balance set incorrectly. So I just needed to fix the color. So if we just dial in here, you can see that I've made adjustments to the RGB channels here, and I've just pulled down the blue, I've pushed up the red highlights, and I've also taken out a bit of green. And just with the Luma curve, I've just pushed up the highlights just a touch, and there was just a little bit of shadows I pulled down, so to add just a touch more contrast. But really, these clips are all about fixing the dominant blue color. Okay, I'm just going to zoom out a bit here and skim forward, and you can see here I've got a couple sections here where I've switched audio tracks. So this is my first audio track, I switched to a new audio track, and then I switched to another audio track over here. And you can see how I overlap them and I blend them together and I fade them in and fade them out. I'm basically just trying to make those transitions as seamless as possible. And that's something I talked about in my other workflow video about adding music, so please check that one out if you want more detail. Now, we're just gonna move ahead here to this middle bit, and you can see where it gets really crazy here. So I've got a ton of beat markers, I've got a ton of clips that just get fired off in really quick succession. And really it's not technically complicated. It's just really labor intensive to get all these short clips flowing well and matching up with the beats. And then finally at the end here, if I just zoom out a bit, you can see that I've taken this one song, Lucid Dreamer, which is the song I used at the very beginning. You can see that I have hacked it into 3 pieces to make it fit the length of this video. And that part I remember being very fiddly. I had to play with it for quite a long time to get everything to match up smoothly and just fade out really nicely at the end. And yeah, that's basically it. Nothing too fancy. It looks pretty complicated, but it's really not. For this type of video, all the work is in finding the clips and putting them together in a sequence that makes sense, and then matching that sequence up to some good music. Well, that's it for this one, guys. I hope it was helpful seeing my editing process, and maybe you learned a thing or two that you can add to your own workflow. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And yep, you guessed it, I will see you in the next one.